Hey guys, this is Chase from the All Blue crew, and we're taking a look at some locals gameplay that I did earlier this week at a local shop that does Wednesday night locals. This is just your standard one-piece locals, best of one. And tonight I'm running Lucci, and so that first hand I went and just threw that away because I'm playing into Boa, and I wanted to see just a little more removal. I did have a play. I am going first. I could have played Sabo on 5, try to find just some action. To try to control their board, just because blue decks, especially 7 Warlords decks, they like to go wide pretty quickly, and so having Lucci or something like a Brook, which I happen to find in my second hand, is pretty necessary. I also managed to score the stage on turn 2, which is pretty awesome as well. No Spandam on 1, but feeling pretty confident going into this matchup. Boa can be a little annoying, especially when they flood the board very quickly with something like Jinbei, but having that stage available pretty much guarantees that this Brook is going to be able to kill anything that he plays immediately. So a little swing for 6, just poke the leader. I do hit a Gecko there, which is pretty unfortunate, at least in the opponent's eyes it's pretty unfortunate, but I do have 2 Geckos already in hand, so I'm not too upset about that. Lucci is a variance in its rawest form. You have no way to really search for Gecko or really any of your high drops unless you run Stussy. So if you mill them, they're just kind of dead. They're dead cards. So I did see some people running Hogback to pull Lucci, or to pull Gecko back into the hand, but I don't run that. And looks like just as I expected to happen, he does go Jinbei into Crocodile. So 2 5,000 power 4 drops on board on his turn 2, and a 5k leader life swing. I don't have a lot of counter in hand, so I'm unfortunately just gonna have to take some of these early hits. I don't typically like to take too many hits from decks that can go wide, just because it really screws me over late in the game, and it really puts a lot of pressure on me to keep killing them later in the game if I'm at a lower life. So I do score a Lucci here. I don't think this is the turn to play the Lucci, though. I think I'm going to do some kind of swing here, eyeballing the Kalifa at first, but that Brook is just so good. Brook is so good into these decks that just spam 4 drops, especially when you find stage in combination with Lucci's ability. Just makes it easy to clean anything up. And so I actually opted to run 3 Brooks in my Lucci build. A lot of other Lucci builds I see do not run that many, but we've got a little bit of red purple all that runs around. I also play red purple all, so I know just how good Brook is against these decks. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kill the Jinbei. If he bounces Croc back to hand, I guess Croc can bounce a 2-drop or less, but really it's not a big deal. But if somehow he gets Jinbei back into hand, that could be a big issue. Blue, though, not notoriously known for bouncing their own cards back into their hand, but who knows, it is locals. People could have fun brews. Brick Fist to put a Jinbei back in the hand to do more shenanigans could definitely be something that can happen, so just going ahead and watching out for that. Opponents on their 6th on turn, they could slap a Boa down to stop the Brook from doing his KO shenanigans, but gonna instead opt to figure out the top of their deck and kind of establish a little bit of a blocker, though that blocker play is pretty easy food for Brook, being that I can -2 at the stage and then just attack with Brook and kill the blocker, the Doflamingo blocker on attack. So I'm feeling pretty confident going into the early game here, establishing a Brook on board with the stage. I do have a Lucci in hand, though I am kind of playing it out for the late game. Do have a Sabo and 2 Geckos in hand. Again, my hand is just not very great to start countering out of stuff just yet, so I am going to ledge to take this. I do flip over a stage. I did think about triggering it out just for funsies, but I did think, if I draw a Sabo to cycle that out, or if I do end up playing that Kalifa, which at this point I decide, I don't want to drop to 2. 2 puts me at a pretty risky spot, so I'm going to try at my best to stay at 3 here, pressuring his life total as well as ensuring that his board is staying relatively clear. Do find another Rebecca off the pickup, so I start to think, I could do some kind of Rebecca into Brook shenanigans to try to clear up this board. Brook again being another way I can KO. I just don't feel like I necessarily have a great option here to Lucci. but I can, so right now, with the amount of minus power in my hand, I can, at 7 Dawn, I can attach one to lead or attach one to Brook, so Brook can at least pressure life, and so I've got at least -4 on the board, and then I do have another stage in hand, which is another -2, so I could effectively -6, so I could, Lucci both of his characters if I really wanted to, but I was actually doing the math and thinking, I might actually be able to Brook both of them instead, and save that Lucci in hand for a turn that he could potentially go wide again, and so that's what I'm kind of thinking, doing the math on it right now. I'm trying to ensure that I'm using as little resources as possible, and so Rebecca kind of is a blocker on board, which blue doesn't have a lot of great options other than just bottom decking it. But if you're bottom decking my Rebecca blocker, I'm not upset because it was probably going to block anyways. But again, doing some math, I do have enough Dawn to swing 5k. And what I ended up doing here, and I think this was in hindsight a slight mistake, was attaching one to lead just to pressure 6k, doing this to minus, and so I'm tricking the opponent. So my philosophy is whenever you attack with a leader or that can minus something, if you minus it on the blocker, more often than not your opponent's going to block with it. And so I was just instead baiting him a little bit, and so I'm going to activate there. I'm going to make it look like I'm just going to go and kill that crocodile. So I do. This is again a misstep with swinging 6. I could have swung 5 and 5. So this Brook only attacks with 4,000 power, so the opponent doesn't have to do anything to get out of that swing. So then I do refresh the stage, and then I will -2 on his Doflamingo. And then I'll play out the Rebecca and bring back that Brook. And so this allows me to kind of establish some dominance on board. Brooks are pretty scary, especially with me already having a stage out. Each one of those Brook swings could potentially pop a character and also deal damage. So Brook, again, showing just how powerful he is, especially against decks that go really wide, really fast. And so opponents going into their 8 Dawn turn, I could expect to see just some shenanigans, and I think the opponent, my opponent here, he chuckles a little bit because he's about to drop some shenanigans on me. So he goes Jinbei into Gecko Moria to bring back the Doflamingo. I believe the Doflamingo blocker, or no, another Jinbei that I killed earlier, and then he's got 4 more Dawn left. He's going to tap that 4 Dawn and just drop down another Jinbei, and then that Jinbei is going to grab out another Doflamingo blocker that he had in his hand, allowing him to set up the top 5 cards of his deck, kind of plan out his next few turns, while also establishing a very big board. And this is kind of where my hindsight last turn of keeping Lucci in hand and instead trying to opt into being resource efficient with Rebecca and Brook will end up being pretty beneficial for me going into this next turn. Now I do have the Sabo as well sitting in my hand. I will be on my 9 Dawn turn next turn, so Sabo allowing me to KO both a 5 or less and a 3 or less by discarding a card from my hand is going to be pretty effective against this board as well. He is opting to swing into Brook. He wants the Brooks to die, and I'm just going to give him a free Rebecca for that, because I want those Brooks to stay around, because not only will they offer me value in KOing, but they're also another source of minusing. Brook doesn't have to minus on something that he can't KO, so he's going to be pretty efficient at this. So I think I'm going to try my best to clean up board to the best of my ability, while also establishing a big body, and I'm kind of eyeballing that Sabo in hand. Now I do have 2 Geckos in hand, though my trash is not very good right now. I don't even think I have a Lucci in trash. I don't have much in trash other than a Rebecca and that Kalifa that we saw earlier, but I don't think I have a Lucci in trash, so I'm not even going to consider Geckoing at this moment. I think the Sabo play actually might be better. So it looks like I'm going to go ahead and go towards that. So I am going to -2 that, basically allowing Brook to swing in and pop the Doflamingo, denying them that block. So we'll get 1 on Brook this time, swing 5k at lead, pop the Doflamingo so they can't block with it, and then pressure. It looks like, so him taking it there gives me a little bit of an idea of kind of what's going on in his hand. Typically blue decks, they run a lot of 2Ks, usually the, at least 12 2Ks. So that kind of tells me, maybe he's running low on resources in hand. Maybe he's got some high drops in his hand, some boas, potentially the 10 drop Kaido, maybe just some stuff he doesn't want to give up at this point in time, just because of the threat of Lucci being able to wipe the board at any given moment. So I'm going to go ahead and attack. Send 5 at lead, we'll -1 on the Gecko. We're going to set it down to 3. So we've got a nice little Sabo play here. We've got a 3, and we've got at least a 4 that we can pop. So we'll tap the rest here and pop the board. So we will discard that Lucci. Again, that Lucci is kind of dead in hand. I do have 2 Geckos, so having that Lucci in the discard or in the trash will be pretty beneficial for me to use on a future turn. So we'll pop that and then pass the turn. So Boa here was able to establish 4 characters on board last turn, and I have reduced them down to 3 while also getting 2 swings into lead and them actually taking a life down to 2. So I'm feeling pretty confident right now. And then he hits me with the Kaido from OP04, bouncing both an 8 and a 3 back to my hand. Now I did talk to him after this game, and it was a value play. He was trying to set up to where he could pressure me, but sending that Sabo back to my hand ended up being more of a downfall, as you'll see later in this video, just because he basically is giving me another opportunity to wipe 2 things on the field. Here's me protecting my life again. I don't want to go to 2. I really like staying at 3, especially in these matchups with decks that go wide. So even like red purple law, I like to stay at 3 because 3 turns off their kid and killers. And it just makes me feel more comfortable. So I do grab a Sabo here, a Sabo blocker. I do think I'm just kind of leaning into the Gecko now. And I actually do a very interesting play this turn. Not the typical play that you'd be thinking. I don't think I'd go for the Lucci here. I think I do something slightly different. Or actually, I do have a I think I do have a Spandine in the yard, so I could actually pull off the Rebecca Helmeppo Spandine combo. That allows me, with what's currently on board, I do have -4 on board, plus another -3 in the yard. That won't be enough to kill Kaido. So I'm already kind of accepting, with no Tempest kicks in hand, I'm not killing Kaido this turn. So I'm just going to leave Kaido alone. I'm going to establish a blocker, so Kaido can't threaten me or my board. I want to keep that Brook around as much as I can. So I think that's the play I end up going with there, just pondering a little bit. Lucci has a lot of different routes you can take on every turn. He's a very thought-intensive deck, I will say. So it's actually pretty fun to play. But yeah, so there's a lot of different opportunities that I could take this turn, a lot of different paths I could take this turn. So just kind of pondering, and I think what I end up wanting to do here is I'm gonna pop the Jinbei with just the -4 I have on board. So that's leader swing plus stage plus Brook. So the Brook swing will pop, and then just kind of pressure two swings of face, and then establish a Gecko. And so you can see me count it up real quick, and then now going into action. So we're gonna attack for 6k at lead. We're gonna -1 on Jinbei, taking Jinbei down to a 3. And then the opponent, so that gives me a great answer. So he used the 0 cost event to counter out a 3 pitching a Boa. So that already tells me his hand is not very good, especially with the no 2k last turn. It was kind of interesting. So I do end up minusing and popping the, and he takes that life too. So the Brook gets in for 5 and he takes it. So that already tells me just like how rough his hand is. He's either playing really risky and he has a lot of counter in hand for like a final turn attack, or he's really banking on this Kaido to stay around and kind of pressure board or pressure my life total. So I do end up going Rebecca into Spandam. Always do the Spandam first, see if Rebecca can find other targets if you're missing a specific target in your yard. And I do end up grabbing just a 2k Kaku to hand, throwing a Spandam, and Rebecca back in the field. Rebecca's going to trigger. And I think here I am debating what I want to get back. I could, do the Lucci Spandam combo, but I end up just wanting that Brook back because Brook is just so good in this matchup. Again, allowing me to -1 just on an attack, which will get me kind of to the number of thresholds I need to kill things. And so I am going to bring out that Brook. Brook's just going to come in. He'll -1 on the Kaido, and then I'm going to pass turn. So I'm feeling pretty confident here. My hand still is pretty counter light. I only have 4K or 5K counter in hand, but my board is like set up to be very, very influential. Got a Gecko on board, 2 Brooks, and then a Rebecca to kind of protect anything that I care about. If he swings at face, I'm going to take it. Because at this point, I don't foresee him being able to close out the game this turn. He does drop a Boa, which again, what I kind of figured he had in hand, something counterless. And he is going to bottom deck my Spandam, drawing him a card. I will note that he did point out at the end of the game that he did miss the Kaido trigger, or he did miss his Boa trigger when playing Kaido. Kaido did return some things off the field. His hand was pretty small, so he didn't get to draw a card there, and that was kind of just a misplay from his side. So he would have had 1 extra card in hand for the rest of the game. Alright, so 6th on for the Boa. Boa is going to stop the Gecko from attacking. That's fine. Gecko is more of just a threat. Just sitting on board, regardless of if you can attack or not. Now he's going to do a little bit of thinking, and I think he's going to send 12 at leader. And I'm like, alright, 12 at lead. Sounds good to me. I'll take that. I end up finding another Sabo blocker. So I do have a contingency plan if he decides to like flood the board and try to go for game. I could just play 2 Sabos and have quite a few blockers. So he's going to play the Law for 4, and he's actually going to activate the Law, which is that new 2K Law, to put a card from my hand on the bottom of my deck, since I have 6 cards in hand. I do have 2 Sabos in my hand, so I'm going to choose the Sabo that has my like lesser better art, I guess. I don't know, lesser art. I do have the promo Sabo in hand. I had an alt art Sabo in hand. I ended up keeping the Sabo with the better art, in my opinion. And then he's going to swing 6 at Brook, or a 5 at Brook with leader. And I think I'm just going to 2K out of that, actually keeping my Rebecca around, just because that Kaido and that Boa, they're pretty big threats. 12K and an 8K. He could potentially try to go for lethal next turn. So, I have to try to protect myself as much as possible, but he does go for the Brook. I decide to keep the Brook because, again, the Brook helps me with math. He's good with the numbers. I do end up picking a Tempest kick here, which pretty much, with my yard being probably 15 plus cards deep, definitely going to be able to -3 on that. And it does allow me to set up a pretty good turn. Remember, he put the Sabo, the 8-drop Sabo, back in my hand. So, I'm eyeballing that Tempest kick. I'm eyeballing how much I can minus on the board. I'm doing some math there. I can at least -5 on board, plus the -3 in hand. Sabo just needs a 5-drop to pop and a 3-drop to pop. So I think what I end up doing is we're going to start with a Tempest kick here. And we're going to target, I believe, the Kaido here. Take the Kaido down to a 7. I don't... This is where I'm saying, man, I really wish I had a 10... a D10 instead of a D6 here, especially with minusing these bigger threats. So I ended up using both my die on it, but it's just a funny thing that I notice sometimes. So Tempest kick, again, -3. Opponent's just curious what that does. And then now Kaido's a 7, so if I again have -5 on board, so if I can get that Kaido down to a 3 or down to a 5, I can pop both characters on board. Basically wiping his board again, with him having a few cards in hand, and then 1 life. I'm going to be in a pretty good spot to end the game here. So I will attach 1 to Brook, -5, or attack for 5 at lead, and then -1 on the Kaido, taking Kaido down to a 6. He's going to 2K. That's that 2K Law that we saw earlier that put a card from my hand on the bottom of the deck. I still have. We're going to attack 5 into lead, milling 2, and then setting him down to a 5. So we have the 5 now, which is exactly what we needed. And we do have that stage on board to minus Boa down to a... we can minus Boa down to a 4 and then attack with Brook to make her a 3. Or we could just use the stage to minus Kaido down to a 3 and attack with Brook. It doesn't really matter how you slice it. But I do believe I have the right numbers to Sabo clear the board this turn. So reaching for that stage. I'm going to tap that stage. Thinking real hard. I don't really know why I'm thinking so hard, but it's going to tap that stage. We're going to -2, so we are going to end up doing the 3 and the 5. just the other way around. So this is me saying, oh man, I really wish I had another die, and then I realized, I just turned that to a 5. And -2 on the boa. So boa's down to 4. Then we're just gonna blanket swing a 4k lead, minusing her down to a 3, which sets it up perfectly. Opponent knows exactly what's about to happen. I'm just gonna Sabo, and we're going to clear both the Kaido and the boa. This time I'm gonna throw a Spandam away from hand, just in case he like builds a giant board next turn, and I need the Gecko, because remember I still have the Lucci in the yard, so I'm pretty well set up to finish this game at this point. I've got 2 9Ks on board, 2 4Ks and a 5K, and he has got 3 cards in hand and 1 life. Not a lot that I can foresee him to be able to get out of this. If he Gravity Blades, he could Gravity Blade both my Brooks, but then I still have 4 attackers. And remember, blockers, even though they typically block, I can slap some Dawn on those and attack with it. He does go with a boa, which pretty much told me that he had 3 boas in hand and a Kaido at one point. So he's going to boa, stop my Gecko again from attacking, and then trying to decide if he wants to go for life, if he wants to try to clear board. He does slap 4 Dawn on his leader, and he is sending that at life again. I'm just going to take it again. I still have a blocker on board, so I'm not very afraid. Blue doesn't have really any rush other than like Usopp in the game, so I'm not really that worried of a sudden rush. I do want to check. Oh, we get a little head cam there. I did want to check his yard just to remember what he discarded, what he countered out of, and that was a 1K and a 2K, giving me a little bit of an idea of what's in his hand potentially. He does have 2 cards in hand, and so I think I go with the very standard. My opponent has 2 cards in hand and 1 life. I'm going to swing 9, so he literally cannot counter out of that, because the max he could counter with no Dawn up is 4K, taking him up to 9. And then now I'm just going to attach 2 to Sabo and swing 11. That's the perfect math to end the game in one piece. And he had 5K in hand.